Hey, and welcome to another episode of Cyber Bytes, the podcast. Today, it's my pleasure to be joined by Luigi Lenguito, who is the CEO and co-founder of BforeAI. Luigi, thanks for coming on. How are you?
Thanks, Stefan. I'm very, very well. Thank you very much for the invitation and looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, likewise. I know we've got a few topics we want to cover, and you've got a very interesting background as well, so I'm
Thank you.
keen to explore that. But for the listeners that don't know who you are, Luigi, can you just give a quick, 60-second introduction to you and a little bit about Before AI as well?
Sure. So Italian as my name unveil, but lived in France for the last 25 years. Extremely passionate about computers. Started when I was 40 years old, and I still use that keyboard 43 years later. So literally lived in front of a screen. And since 5 years, founders of Before AI, a predictive security and preemptive defense company that is growing very, very fast. And most of our business in very large corporation in the US. Today about 80 people in 34 countries, and growing about 20% every month. So very, very, very proud of what we're doing.
Yeah, exciting times for you guys for sure. Where I'm going to start today is I want to rewind before your journey at Dell. For those that didn't know, you worked at Dell for a number of years, but I understand you were essentially a racing driver, right? Before that, and you operated and drove in Formula 3. Talk to us about that. Was that always a passion as well when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think, I was 8 years old with go-karts, and I ended at about 20 years old in Formula 3 and Formula 4. There is some, historical thing in my DNA where, my grandfather used to be the logistician for Ferrari, in the 40s and 50s, right at the very beginning of Alfa Romeo and Ferrari at times. And so, maybe at the time I was such a small kid, hearing those stories, seeing this picture kind of created that, that impetus. But yeah, a long, far away story, because I turned the page of racing, now more than nearly 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And but yeah, still passionate about cars, still going for, around tracks with my fast cars, but just for leisure rather than competition.
Sounds fun. And talk to me about that journey then. So that was always a passion. What did you want to actually rewind? How did you leverage that experience as a competitive racing driver and take that into the business world? Because in my opinion, there's a lot of commonalities that come up.
I think, it's something that, because it's kind of intertwined in my childhood, is really part of me, right? So it's behavior that I have, but when I observe, both what I did at Dell and now what we're doing with Before, I definitely can see, some parallel, right? So I'll give you an example. One of the things when you do karting that you learn very, very early, and then you bring into Formula, is that you only watch the mirror when you are getting out of the turn, right? In the moment in which you're accelerating and it's safer, then you watch the mirror to see if there is anybody behind you. But you don't constantly watch the mirror to see, who's competing with you and so on. And I think this in business is very important, that you don't focus on your competitor, but you focus on the front, right? Going faster and, improve yourself. And, yes, time by time, have a check of the competitors, but do it, without being too, too focused on them. So this is just one example, but I think, there are many, you're right, many parallel you could run. Often people say that companies are like family, right? And I think is an absolute, wrong way of looking at it, right? So eventually we will fire people. You never fire somebody from a family, right? But I do think that company like a team sport and competition, high competition, right? And so much like in a Formula One, you have a driver that, get the accolades, but the reality is, from the receptionist to the aerodynamicist to, the engine, builder of, one of the other thousands of profession that you have. everybody counts, and the race is won because everybody has done a perfect job. And so I think that's a better analogy for company building.
I agree. I sometimes cringe when you see the family associated to work, because you're exactly right. When would you? I mean, you'd hope not. You wouldn't fire a family member, right? So
Yeah, and I think it's also important that in a family you're not constantly striving for improvement. I mean, you accept people how they are, and you know them, and sometimes maybe you don't speak with them as much because maybe you have different perspective. In a team business, everybody has a goal, and everybody understand their role to achieve that goal. And if they're not good enough, they'll be the first one that will want to improve because they don't want to let the team down. So I think it's way better way of looking at other company setup.
For sure. And then so you kind of, I guess, somewhat ended your racing career. Why did that
I ran
end,
out
and
of
why
money.
did you? Okay, I was going to say
Very
it's
simple.
expensive.
Yeah, so
Right.
if you see now in Formula One, there is no Italian driver, right? And so that basically is down to periods that that's the period I was going through the ranks, in which there were some rules of sponsorship that changed it. And so most of us drivers didn't find new sponsors because all the money went to soccer, and that I decided that I could become a test driver. I was very good in test driving, but there wasn't I wanted to win. I wanted to to keep improving myself, not just lapping always at the same constant timing. And so I decided, okay, if I cannot do the best of my best, then this is not an industry I want to stay on. And thankfully I had this other passion that was IT, right? And there was an opportunity at the time. Dell Computer was starting their business in south of Europe, and I was hired from them in France. So also I needed a change of context as well, because when you're racing, you basically spend every day of the week in a way or in another connected, and sacrificing many other things. And so it was really a very kind of fast and hard turning of a page, and I've never gone back to racing again.
Yeah, cool. And talk to us about the journey at Dell then. So you started out in like tech support, right? And
Correct.
then
I started at the very front line, the lowest possible role you can think of. I was providing phone assistance to Italian customer that was relatively small at the time in Italy, so we were just a couple of people. At the tech support, I was responsible for the server and storage. And then I stayed at Dell 18 years, more than 26 different jobs in these years, evolving from technical to training to marketing, sales, product development, product management, merger and acquisition, vice president of sales, then run out the carve out of the Quest software business, and then became vice president of sales at Quest software. So yeah, pretty diverse. And I still cherish that 18 years of school for me, because that's really where I've learned business from the ground up.
yeah, what advice would you give to someone that's maybe starting out an entry-level role in a big organization? Because you were clearly very successful to get to a strong leadership position. What advice would you give to that person?
So first of all, I was very lucky that this company was growing very fast and very meritocratic. Michael Dell said the largest startup in the globe, and there are, now that I've done a startup, kind of many parallels. I think there are three traits that you want to really, kind of force, right? First of all, be extremely curious, be always learning, be always trying to find information, speak with people, get to know more about the business, about other department. What is your role in the in the whole machine? I think there is no better place to learn than doing stuff in a company, especially if it's growing and is successful. The second thing is identify role models. This may be specific leaders or specific key people that you really can look up to, and if you can get them as mentor, all the better, but at least observe their behavior, and if they're being promoted, if they're being put in leadership role, is because they are exemplary in some form or shape for the values of the company. And so that will give you kind of I would say a north star, at least at the beginning, to follow. Then you'll become yourself and take your own route. And the third thing is really about how to say this. It's a question of eagerness, right? So show that you want to contribute to the success of the company. Take ownership of new roles, take ownership of new projects. In my 26 jobs, I think not one job existed before I took it. So that everyone was created for me because I was constantly, pointing at new opportunities, and then eventually they would say, "Okay, listen, do it." And most of the time I didn't know, right? When I moved to marketing, I had no clue of marketing. I moved into sales, no clue of sales, merger and acquisition, nothing. But because you have the right attitude, then you can learn. Right? Learning hard skill is easier than showing soft skill attitude. And so I think invest in your soft skill attitude, because the rest you can learn, especially now with all the stuff that is on YouTube and podcast and whatever you. I mean, there's an infinite amount of opportunity to learn. So there's really no reason not to, invest in yourself.
Yeah, and I think that last point ties in. One of the best pieces of advice I think I've been given is like, always raise your hand. Be that person that just puts your hand up, right? And it ties into that because it sounds like you were just ready to dive straight in and learn, even when you probably had no idea what you're doing. You're just learning the job.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, for me, it's kind of one of my passion is learning. Right? I'm a learning machine, and so that's maybe also why I pointed that. But I do think that in nowadays jobs, with everything changing around us, tooling, now AI and all the AI washing that you have, technology, new business models. The good news is that as humans, we have this capability to reinvent ourselves and to grow and to learn. And so it's a shame if you don't use it, right? And you stay stuck. But, all respect for people that love to improve their own craft and continuously improve. That is another perspective. You need to know where you sit. Are you more into this constant change and evolution of yourself, or are you more into perfecting yourself? And then that drives also a set of decision in the job you want to take.
Yeah, for sure. And when Dell ended, am I right in saying that you're thinking about retirement at the time?
I actually did basically retire. So I had always this dream of 40 years old, leaving and taking a break. I'm a big fan of a book called The 4-Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss. And he argued that we shouldn't wait for retirement to enjoy life, but we should take mini retirements more regularly, like every, 5 or 10 years and so on. So I had this kind of thing. I'll say, okay, when I'll be 40, I'll start the process of the mini retirement. And that's basically what I did. We did this spin-off of Quest Software. So and so this was for me also leaving Mother Dell right after 18 years and going in a smaller company, because this Quest Software were 5,000 people and so on. And then time of 1 year to kind of stand up the separation and make it a bit more stable. And the last few years have been pretty successful for me, and so it was a good opportunity to take a break and return to my cars in a more intense way.
Very cool. And what's the story behind BforeAI then?
Yeah, so during those 2 years of semi-retirement, I got invited in a research institute, by a research institute. They were running a program called Research to Startup, and their objective was to find entrepreneurs that would bring to market technologies and patents that they had built over the years. And so I go to this program, and I'm selected for the program, and I meet my 2 co-founders there, Luciano and Sebastian. They're both from Argentina, in Buenos Aires, so we wouldn't have met otherwise if it wasn't for this program. And by the way, Luciano, serial entrepreneur, a number of startups, so he has that growth mindset, product mindset. And Sebastian, ex-IBM, is our CTO now, really more on infrastructure. And then I met with the researchers, and the researchers were talking me about this behavioral analytics, these data pipelines. And I got a flashback to many years earlier when I was selling firewalls, and customers were always telling me, Luigi, it's great, all this new technology you bring into market, but we're always late, we're always victim, we're always behind the criminal. Why you cannot figure out something before the attack? And one customer specifically said, Luigi, you really need to go to the movies. There is this one from Steven Spielberg with Tom Cruise, Minority Report. You'll love it. And, I think in the audience, many will remember, the three mutants in the pool. They could see the future of crime, the pre-crime police that would jump on the scene before the crime was even made. And I thought, wow, this is so cool. Be great if we had it. At the time, it was called Network Security. But I thought, I'm not sure about the mutant aspect of this movie. And, but, at the time, predictive analytics and big data were kind of the big, kind of buzzword. So I thought maybe one day somebody will pick up data from internet and with the smarts of predictive analytics, figure out the behavior of criminal and stop them before crime happens. And then now, many years later, I'm speaking with this researcher. The guys are explaining me their math. And I said, this is pre-crime. I need to bring it to market. And the first sign was that pre-crime as a word had not been trademarked by 20th Century Fox. So we actually own the trademark for pre-crime. And that is what we do. We predict sources of future cyber attack weeks in advance with great accuracy, more than 99 to 95% of the time, and we block the attacks before the attack happens, saving millions of people now with our customer before crime happens.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and we'll definitely touch on that shortly. One of the things I wanted to touch on as well, so that kind of brings us up to present day, and with BforeAI, you've been through two fundraisers, right? Yep. Seed and Series A. Congratulations, by the way, on your Series A, because it wasn't too long ago, was it? It was just after or before RSA.
Yep.
Cool. What's your experience been like with that whole fundraising journey? Because is that your first time? It sounds like you might have had similar experiences, but first time properly doing it. So what's your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I've been in M&A, but it was more the other side of the table, buying rather than trying to get funded. And it's definitely the first funded startup that I tried to do. Another startup that failed miserably, and I lost $200,000 but it was a good layer because it was expected, my MBA, let's put it this way. So BforeAI, we started in November 2020. We did a first round with family and friends and an accelerator, basically. This was in February 2021, so 3 months in was a $300,000 euro, sorry. And by the way, BforeAI started as a French company founded in Montpellier, city of Nostradamus. So obviously, connected with the prediction. And so a few months later, so August 2022, so 18 months later, we did our Series Seed with Karma Venture in Estonia, Karma Capital in France, and Addendum Capital in Spain. And then, as you said, in April this year, so another 18 months, we have done $15 million raise with Sin Ventures in the US and Partnership Fund for New York City. And in the process, we flipped the company to a Delaware Inc., and we have now headquartered in New York. So listen, I mean, it's interesting because, I've had both the European side of the venture capital conversations and the US side of venture capital conversation, and done it in a period like the early 20, basically late 21, where we started to have that crunch in terms of funding. Done it now that the funding is kind of still limited, but it's reopening a little bit. And the caveat here is that we are in cybersecurity. It is a pretty specific sector. There's a lot of interest. The market is buoyant. It's definitely at the beginning of a long journey, and so investors do want to participate in this market. I think to me, a couple of takeaways. First of all, it is a number game. So for our Series Seed, I think I spoke with about 150 venture capital firms.
Wow.
For our Series A, I've done probably 240 in the data room. And, I have a quarterly newsletter that I send to interested party aware of what we're doing. And I think I have about 340 VCs at the moment, for our next round, if you want to look at it this way. Yeah. So first, it's really, and again, there are different ways, and I'm not saying what I'm doing it's the only way to do it. First of all, it's not mandatory that you do a VC funded company. If anything, you need to have that ambition and that design of your journey in the future that is compatible with a VC fund. That means that you are looking for, a huge growth in very short time frame that enabled the funds after 5-8 years to sell their shares and see the return on capital. And that is not what everybody wants to do. And a lot of respect for bootstrapped guys and people that want to grow in a different way. The other takeaway is really understand what is the type of investor that you want, right? There are generalists, there are specialists, that are, when all of them, the wire transfer will be the same, right? The money hitting the bank account is the same, but the collaboration that you will have and the partnership that you build will be very different depending on what their thesis is, what their experiences are, and so on. So, in my case, in our case, the first round, it was more about having investor that would understand the journey of a technology-driven company. So we have Karma and Carista that are deep tech investors. In the second round, it was more about US expansion and building a cybersecurity specialist at speed. And so Scene Venture, I don't think there's any better than that. So you need to really understand what you're trying to do in your plan to find the right partner. So that's the second learning. And the third learning is, test the partnership during the fundraising process. So I'll make an example, right? One of the value of BforeAI is having fun and reward. And that reward means that we pay people fairly for the job that they do in our company. That also means that as a founder, we want to be paid fairly. And the conversation about compensation of founders is always a little bit of a tricky one. And so, to make the point in our business plan, I always increased our compensation in a way that was, nuts, right? And of course, that point will come through at some point in the conversation. So first of all, if it didn't come through, it would tell me two things: that either they were not looking at the business plan in detail, or they didn't want to have the hard conversation. And that for me was a no-no, because in a partnership, you do want to have those hard conversations. When it did come up, how the conversation went was also an indicator of the partnership, right? Do they, how they appreciate the work of the founder? What is their expectation? And so, when we got what we wanted in terms of founder pay. It wasn't what was in the plans, because again, it was more of an artificial kind of trick. But that these kind of things, you need to think how you can test, right? It's I remember somebody telling me getting an investment from a VC is even more long lasting than a wedding, because you have divorce in marriages, but you cannot divorce from your investors, or at least not in a very pretty way. So I haven't tested divorce, and I love my wife, and I have no problem on that. But I can definitely see that you want to be very picky from a certain perspective. And of course, to be picky, you need to put yourself in that position. That means having the right traction, having the right execution from a company perspective. And when the company is growing and is having success, you will have a lot of attention from investors from across the globe.
Yeah, they're great learnings. So thank you for sharing them. The last one's, yeah, it's. I was going to ask you how would you test, but just throwing in like a curveball, something completely out of the ordinary, because the process behind you putting that in exactly as you described it was going to be the differentiator of a yes or a no. So it's very unique, very unique. And then BforeAI then. So how would you define predictive security, and what are Gartner saying about that as well?
Yeah, so the motivation, the initial motivation to start BforeAI was really, aside that we had the technology, I was thinking already something that will rebalance the discussion, the posture of companies. I was seeing everybody going in detection and response, this assume mentality that I despise, because it means that everybody has to accept to be a victim. I do not want to be a victim. I just cannot stand being a victim. I don't think anybody should be a victim, at least as a posture perspective. And so I was searching for, okay, what can we do to bring something left to boom before the attack happens? So we came across this technology, and what it's really about, it's think about weather forecast, right? 100 years ago, weather forecast was watching the color of the sky in the evening and guessing. And other people would dance and somebody would pray. Nobody would get it right. People would die in a hurricane. You couldn't organize your vacation. What is today? Today is satellites, supercomputing power, 100 years of data, super models. And, I'm sure everybody in the audience would have checked today or yesterday the weather forecast on their mobile phone. Has become part of our life. We organize our vacation. Climate events are not as dangerous as they used to be. And so that is kind of the step forward that we are doing. So it's about giving this foresight of what's coming to then take an action. And this is very important, right? The prediction alone, if I tell you tomorrow is going to rain and you not pick up the umbrella, what's the point, right? So it's extremely important to have a preemptive action. So with this foresight, block the communication to the malicious, future malicious infrastructure, or take down that infrastructure that we do for our customer. And so the combination of prediction and preemption give you then a deterrence capability. We see this on our customer when we do at scale preemption. The number of attacks actually reduced over time. Right? So we have this bank in Italy, Volksbank. When we started working with them, they had probably around 400 attacks per week. And now 2.5 years later, they are about 4 to 6 attacks a month. Wow. And it's basically what has happened is we have raised the level of the cost, if you want, of the attack and effort from the criminals. And the tale about the two friends and the bear, and you don't have to outrun the bear, you have to outrun your friends, right? So it's that kind of things, and you need to create a condition where the effort to attack is higher than against somebody else, so that the criminal divert their attention elsewhere. That's cyber deterrence. And definitely, if you look at we are on 21 different reports from Gartner, and definitely this whole concept of moving left of boom, focusing on preemption, so preemptive defense, and even starting to look into cyber deterrence techniques is a big subject that at the moment the analysts are promoting. Once again, because the extreme detect and response reactive solution that are important, they should continue, but it cannot be the only way to look at the industry. It's too myopic to think that problems of the scale and the speed that we are observing can be only solved reactively, knowing moreover that a reactive posture is the most expensive posture, right? And I think it's common sense, right? So they say an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, right? It's ancestral. We know that's better than before something happened. But cybersecurity has fallen in the wrong direction, and we're trying to rebalance it and make it more in an equilibrium between left and right of boom.
That's very interesting. So essentially, you want attackers to see, oh damn, they're associated with BforeAI. There's no, let's just avoid it and move on. Like that. That's the perception.
Yeah, one day we may have a BforeAI inside sticker that we give to our customer. I don't know, but for now it's enough. I don't care if they think that BforeAI is there or not. They have to see that their effort go to waste. And so that they better put their time somewhere else. I mean, of course, we are only looking at primarily looking at economically driven crime. So a state actor will have a different motivation and would not be deterred from what we do. But that's not our focus, right? We're focusing on the vast majority of cybercrime that is really about scams and frauds and all sorts of ransomware and so on and so forth. And those ones are extremely ROI motivated. And so we just want to make their equation wrong. And so they move away.
Great. And to wrap this up, Luigi, it's been a super insightful conversation. So thank you so much for sharing this. You've got a very interesting stance on remote working as a business. Can you just elaborate on that and share with the audience, firstly, your take on remote working, but then also what you guys are doing and how that's allowing you to be a bit different within the space?
Yes. So first of all, I don't like calling it remote, because remote means that you're far away from somebody in the center. I call it distributed because the distance from all our employees is the same, basically, right? So we don't have an headquarter, we don't have physical office. I personally started to work in this flexible mode in 2001. I was one of the very first Dell employees to have fully distributed status, fully flexible. So, 5 years later, I couldn't have built a company that would have brought me back to the office, right? It just wouldn't have made a sense from my history perspective. Plus, we started in March 2020 to work on the product. And obviously, you remember March 2020, we were all stuck at home, right? So my co-founders are in Argentina. So you see, there was a will and a reason at the same time. So today we are 81 people in 34 countries, 38 nationalities, nearly 50% women. So extremely distributed, but extremely diverse as well, very multicultural company. And I'm a big believer. We are on the extreme of fully distributed because it's not only we don't have office and we have this fully distribution, we also adopt what we call a global single cost. That means that for each job, we have identified the cost for the company. And no matter where you are in the world, we want to have that cost on the company. That means that, a product manager in France that may have a cost of $200,000 will cost us $200,000 even if they are in India. So that means that the person in India is bringing home, an amount that for the local compensation market is extraordinary, right? And that is enabling us to do a number of things like hiring the best of the best in each market. It also enables us to do the third level of fully distribution, that is work from anywhere. So we enable our team to move around, not only working, temporarily from another country or another place, but moving from one country to another permanently. We have had people from France to Australia, people from France to Germany, people from UK to Spain. So we can do that because the rule is simple. As long as the cost for the company doesn't change, you can go wherever you like. And we have, partnership with companies like Deal. They do all the employee on record. So it's actually nowadays possible to do this type of things in a very, neat way without being too complicated for a small company like we are. And then on top of this, we are aiming to be fully asynchronous. That means doing away with meeting where, like this one we are having at the moment, where we both block time at this concurrent time, right? Now, not trying to avoid it completely, but trying to make it the exception. And so working fully asynchronously means enabling people to work at the time of the day that they are more productive. It enables people from different time zones to collaborate without creating conflict of their personal schedules. It enables inclusivity of people that work in a more maybe to say introvert way. We know that synchronous meetings are a big waste of time, mostly because you do not include everybody that is in the meeting. And then also, if somebody was not in the meeting most of the time, they lose information. So there are ways that we are working on and we get inspiration by other companies anyway, by the like GitLab and Automatic and Atlassian. Thankfully, there are, they have done investment and studies on these things. But I do think that we are very early in the getting the value of this new way of working. For us, the primary return so far is, great place to work. Everybody enjoys, the being part of BforeAI. Great attractivity of talent because, there aren't so many companies that are fully distributed and would never have a return to office because they have no office whatsoever. And then, this ability to, pick up the best people wherever they are, really true to my belief that, talent is equally distributed. But I still believe that there is a ton to improve. If you think, working in office has been perfected over the last 50, 60 years, working fully distributed is, at best a 10-year-old discipline, right? So there is new tooling, new practices, training, behaviors that need to be developed. And so I'm so excited to see where this will go, because already today we are more productive and, we don't see the limit compared to an hybrid or full office setup. And so, from
Love the
now,
approach.
going forward is all upside, for at least from my perspective.
Okay, so the time actually run out there at the end, but we're back on. So yeah, Luigi, I know you were just wrapping up your point anyway. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I love the unique approach that you guys are offering from a remote workforce perspective. Thanks so much for sharing the insights into your investor journey, your background in Formula 3, which is great, and your journey with BforeAI as well. If folks want to get in contact with you or the team, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, with me, the easiest is LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn maven, so you'll find me, very, very easily over there. And for the team, before.ai without the first E, right? So, you can contact the team. You can learn more about the company. If you want to see the platform, you can do demo.before.ai, and you can navigate freely the platform and see what we offer. And definitely looking forward to hear from the audience and getting more questions. I think this was a very interesting conversation and good food for thought. And I always like great questions because they make your brain kind of exercise. So that's been a good time. Thank you, Stefan.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Well, yeah, Luigi, it's been a pleasure. We'll speak again soon, I'm sure. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed today's show, please like and share with your friends and colleagues, as this is really important for the show's reach. If you'd like to be our next guest or are interested in Aspiron Search's staffing solutions, please get in touch directly with me or reach out to us via our website www.aspironsearch.com.